Work on weekends. Hours a night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the public hearing for the proposed permit amendments for Kelkari phases 2 and 3. We'll have a presentation that will do a reasonable job of explaining the project. Then what I'd like to do is open up the meeting for some public comment to hear what all you great people that came out have and what your thoughts are, and then we'll have some comments after that. We'll close that public part, and then we'll have some comments. We don't expect there to be a decision to make. What we're doing is really listening and then trying to pay attention to what's going on. We have a few administrative things to do before we get going with that. We have some minutes from some previous meetings, and so what I would like to ask is for a motion that would prove all three of those minutes, unless somebody, and if a commissioner has some comments or some changes to identify that specific meeting note and the changes you'd like to make. So,
You have a small question on page 16 of the minutes. On the table row 70 of 93, I think there's a commissioner identified there as R-O-E-H-L. Should that be Roeder, R-O-E-T-E-R?
Yes.
Okay. And same thing on page 17. The row is 81 of 93.
excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the minutes for July 19th, July 26th, and August 2nd, 2017.
With the
amendment.
great.
A second?
Great. Any discussion? Further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. So let's go.
Okay.
So good evening, Development Commission. Keith Niven, Director of Economic Development and Development Services for the city. So tonight, we get back into what we do, which is review permits. We've been talking architecture and urban design for a while. And as fun as that was, back to work. So this one is a little bit of an odd duck. And I'm going to start by apologizing because the staff report is really complicated and long. And part of the reason for that is what we're doing is we're actually reviewing an amendment to an existing approval, which is different than reviewing an application basically where there's just city code to review it against. Here we actually had to review it against the decision that was made in 1999. And so that makes it a little bit more complicated. And as I originally wrote the staff report, I thought, well, how are you guys going to go back and look at what was originally done and compare it to what's being recommended now? And that seemed like a really complicated process to go through. And so what I did is I took the original staff report and I actually added commentary and text and new conditions to it, and hopefully that was somewhat understandable as you guys went through your packet this evening. So what I'm going to do is go through a semi-brief presentation, but then what I would like to do is go through the proposed conditions so that you can understand what was originally conditioned as part of the original approval, where that condition lies today, and then what new conditions the administration is recommending that we add to this particular application. Seemed like, at least for me, that was a good starting spot to go through that. It'll be a little bit arduous, but I'll try and get through it fairly quickly. And then whether or not the applicant wants to, provide some sort of commentary or additional information, that might be a good opportunity for that. And we can open up for public comment, and then commission can ask questions if that's the way you would like to proceed. Okay, so project location. So Kelkari is located basically on both sides of Sunrise Place Southwest, and that's in kind of the southeastern portion of the city. It's shown generally by this bubble diagram. Looking at the project, it's really, so phase 2 and phase 3 are actually split by Sunrise Place. Phase 2, and I'm kind of directionally challenged, I think is on the north side. And then, is that the north side? East side. That's the east side? So the east, let's go with east. So phase 2 is on the east side, and phase 3 is on the west side. Phase 2 will be adjacent to phase 1, which you can see in this photo, which is already constructed. Phase 3 on the other side of the street is currently undeveloped land, and that is undeveloped. So what's being proposed right now is 72 townhouses on common parcels. So they will be condominiums, but they will be in more of a townhouse format than in a stacked flat format. Kelkari Phase 1, you can see in the photograph, it is more of a stacked flat project than a townhouse project. So just kind of getting you kind of thinking about this in terms of different types of housing units and what was originally approved versus what's proposed right now. As you can see from the slide, Phase 2 and Phase 3 originally included approval for 126 condominiums. What's being proposed today is 72 townhouse condominiums. The reason why we're here, so this is technically an administrative decision. This is, if you look at the city code and you look at what's considered a minor amendment to a master site plan and an administrative site development permit, you would basically see that it is a level 2 review. Level 2 review is not a development commission review. So you could say, okay, why are we even here? We are here because the administration believed that this application was so complicated because it's not just dealing with the old approval, site development permit approval, but it's also dealing with a binding site plan amendment and a master site plan amendment. And we had some concerns from the adjacent community, and I'm glad that they're here this evening, that caused the administration to say, you know what, rather than us just review this application and make a decision, let's go ahead and bring this to the Development Commission and allow for some additional public comment, and that way the process can be more transparent and hopefully have a better outcome than if the administration just made this decision as a normal level 2 decision. So that's why we're here. The administration kicked this up to you guys, and so you guys are the decision makers tonight, okay? And if there's questions, feel free to stop me. I'm good with that. All right, so at this point, I'm going to, the commission can ask questions at this point. The public, sorry, the public will have an opportunity as soon as I get through this. I promise I won't take too long. No worries. So the original condition here is the black text, and then the red text is my ad. Okay, so conditions 1, 2, and 3 really relate to impact fees, what the impact fees were at the time, what has been paid, and what is still owed. I am not going to read through those. Hopefully you guys understand the impact fee formula for the city, and like I said, if you have questions, let me know. Condition number 4 related to street improvements. Okay. 4A, I'm going to go ahead and read through these. Sunset Place Southwest shall be improved to meet current street cross sections or the equivalent and shall have 32 feet of paving and sidewalk on one side. Okay, so we're going to stop here because in some places, I'm going to admit on the 100-page staff report I gave you, there's some technical inaccuracies. Here we are, number 1. Sunrise Place Southwest is currently 28 feet. And part of this application was a request to leave it at 28 feet and not widen it to 32. 28 feet is basically 2 10-foot travel lanes and a parallel parking that's 8 feet wide. So that meets city standard, and right now, our position is that that's wide enough. To widen that street by another 4 feet would actually lead to an increase in speeds on that road, because a wider road will lead to people driving faster because they will feel like they have the ability to do that. So our position is to leave it at 28, and that's why on 4A we're identifying it's complete. 4B, widen and rechannel the intersection of Newport Way and Wildwood Boulevard Southwest. The design tentatively includes separate left and right turn lanes from Wildwood Boulevard Southwest onto Newport Way, and a single lane from Newport Way onto Wildwood Boulevard Southwest. A concomitant, I don't even know what that means, agreement is also required for full signalization of this intersection if warranted by future traffic, of which Kelkari-related traffic forms a substantial part, or accident conditions, and if such signalization will cause a demonstrable improvement in traffic flow. Yes. All right. So 4B, so I checked with our engineering department, and they told me that 4B is complete. So this condition has been satisfied, and there's no additional requirement coming out of 4B. 4C, the right-of-way across Kelkari shall be 50 feet and shall be improved with, as mentioned in 4A, 28 feet of paving and 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. And we're deeming that complete. 4D, the applicant shall sign a concomitant agreement for the cost of applicant's fair share of a pedestrian crossing on the Clark Street Bridge as required under the mitigation section of Foothills draft environmental impact statement, page 148, in the traffic study. This has been determined by the city to be no longer applicable. 4E, construction of a school bus turnout, if required by the school district, at the intersection of Wildwood and Sunrise Place. Right now, that's not required. 4F, replace the existing culvert at Cabin Creek with a bottomless arch culvert designed to the specifications of and approved by the city's Public Works Department. That culvert has been replaced. 4, let's see, we're on A. This is this is still part of 4. So A, this is kind of like easements and encumbrances. So A is an additional easement area or dedication shall be made to the city as may be required during final design stage to ensure adequate line of sight, and that's for traffic, is provided at all intersections and justifications of the roadway system. And that is required still. So where the access points are for Phase 2 and Phase 3 out onto Sunrise, there will need to be adequate line of sights for cars coming in and exiting at those locations. And if there is line of sight encumbrances at those driveways or street intersections, those will need to be recorded. So C, provide the city with slope easements or construct retaining walls in the right-of-way at the direction of Public Works per Public Works requirements for the public roadways and show these easements on the final plat. That has been done. D, work with Metro to develop a transportation management plan for that development, which incorporates the following. Provide a free 1-month bus pass to renters. So this is no longer necessary since these are for sale units. Having a transportation management plan for a subdivision doesn't really make sense. It's not what we do. The applicant shall maintain, I'm on 5, a minimum 50-foot buffer from the ordinary high water mark of.
You skip B just for.
D?
B as in Baker.
Baker. I'm sorry. Right-of-way for the cul-de-sac road shall measure 37 feet in width. These right-of-ways shall come city streets, I'm going to guess that's become city streets, and shall be improved with 24 feet of paving, which accommodates 5-foot sidewalk on one side. So the current plan for both Phase 2 and Phase 3 don't include cul-de-sacs. They actually include a split T turnaround, and we'll get to that when we get to the site plan. So this is no longer applicable.
Thank you.
And then 5 is the applicant shall maintain a 50-foot buffer from the ordinary high water mark of Cabin Creek. You can see Cabin Creek is actually located, so if that's east and west, that would be north. North of Phase 1, it's closest to Phase 1, which is right here. Phase 2 and Phase 3 are farther away from Cabin Creek, and so that 50-foot buffer is part of the current proposal. Number 6, the applicant shall maintain a minimum buffer of 10 feet from the top/toe of all steep slopes, plus maintain a minimum building setback of 15 feet from the slope buffers. Native growth protection easement signs, which are for the identification of protection of steep slope areas, shall be placed at steep slope areas as required by the Public Works Department. So my clarification on this condition is man-made steep slopes may be regraded pursuant to the city code. So some of the slopes out on that property were actually, they're not naturally occurring. They occurred due to previous grading activities. And per the city code, they're allowed to be regraded. And buffers for steep slopes, including protection easements and signage, is governed also by Section 1810. One clarification on this condition is that right now the city code does allow for some minor intrusions within buffers of steep slopes. And I don't believe that the intent of condition 6 was to not allow for the city code to apply. So even though this says the applicant shall maintain a minimum buffer of 10 feet, the expectation is where the city code allows for some intrusions or within the 15-foot building setback area, that as long as they met the criteria from city code, that would still apply. Number 7, prior to issuance of building permit, the applicant shall establish a mechanism acceptable to the city which notifies future buyers of the apartment condominium units or lots that steep slope buffers were reduced and that development has occurred within 50 feet of steep slope. The applicant shall execute an agreement that indemnifies and holds the city harmless for development within 50 feet of slope. So this is required. We do this in other places where development encroaches within critical areas to identify to property owners that, hey, you just purchased land that either is on an existing or a graded slope, and therefore it indemnifies the city from future liability. Number 8, a building permit and public works construction permit shall first be issued prior to construction of the project. That is also required. And then I did add, unless otherwise approved by the director. So in some cases, so this says building permit and public works, and it is not always the practice of the city to require both a building permit and a site work permit at the same time. If an applicant wants to grade and put in utilities prior to having a building permit, those are things we do allow. So, but I didn't want to give that outright, and that's why it says at the discretion of the director. Number 9, prior to issuance of the building permit for Phase 1, the applicant shall make connections between the service areas of the Wildwood and Mount Hood water reservoirs per the approval of the Public Works Department to provide adequate fire flow. The cost of the connection shall be the responsibility of the applicant. Phase 2 and Phase 3 of Kelkari shall also not go forward until the city can assure adequate fire flow. So that is complete. Those connections have been made, and there is adequate fire flow in the area. Number 10, the applicant shall participate in the cost of the proposed 480 zone water reservoir. That is also complete. Number 11, prior to issuance of the building permit, Public Works Department shall approve the final design of the stormwater system, and that is required. Number 12, the Public Works Department shall have final approval of textured concrete that's proposed to be used across Southwest Sunrise Place, linking the north and south sides of the project. My comment on that is no textured concrete shall be placed across Sunrise Place unless it is determined necessary by the city as a visual cue for pedestrian crossings. Other means such as pedestrian crossing signage shall be explored. The reason for that is, although textured concrete is nice to look at and planners love it, and I'm a planner, so I can say that. It's kind of a maintenance headache for the city, and so it is a tool in the toolbox to help cue drivers that there's pedestrians crossing, but it's not the only one. And so what this condition is saying is that they should explore other proposed methods to safely get people across Sunrise Place than textured concrete. Number 13, all compact and accessible parking stalls shall be appropriately labeled. It's required. Number 14, the applicant shall enter discussion with Issaquah School District concerning bus route access to the site. That's been done already. Number 15, all significant trees within the vicinity of the site construction that are proposed to be saved shall be protected in accordance with Section 1812 180D, preservation of trees of the land use code. Those measures may include but not limited to fencing around the trees. That is required. Number 16, the area north of Building 3. So I made you a little map here because I started doing buildings going, okay, where are we really talking about? So the area north of Building 3, so you look at the areas that I have like green blobs on this map that I gave you here. Those are the areas where this condition is asking for additional vegetation. So that is still required and would be done with the landscape permit for this project. 17, all landscaping shall be irrigated as required by Chapter 1812, 160D of the IMC. That's required. 18, any changes or substitutions to the landscaping shall be approved first by the Development Services Department these days. We don't have a planning department before being implemented. That's required. Number 19, a cash deposit of 50% of the value of the landscape material shall be posted with the city prior to receipt of a temporary or final certificate of occupancy as required by 1812-050A. That's actually not a correct citation. The citation should be 1812-160A2. And the way that that code section reads is it says cash deposit or other surety. Typically, we get construction and maintenance bonds and not actual cash. The city otherwise would get robbed a lot, probably. So we have other guarantees typically than cash. They could use cash, but most developers don't like to post that much cash. Number 20, a monitoring and maintenance plan for both Cabin Creek stream restoration and the wetland enhancement shall be provided. It's complete. Number 21, a sign permit shall be required to be issued by the city prior to the installation of the monument signs. The proposed monument signs shall also have minimum 2-foot setback from the property line. Safe site distance must be met. So there is a Kelkari monument sign out there now. Part of this proposal is to move it. So that would, all of these provisions in 21 would be required to move for the moval. Not sure that made sense, but anyway. So 22, parking for 32 bicycles shall be required based on Chapter 1809-030I, or 1. Let's go with 1 of the Land Use Code. Bicycle parking racks shall be placed on both north and south parcels of the project site. The location and design of the bike rack shall be provided with building permits. Bike racks shall be included in Phase 2 and Phase 3 as part of the common area improvements. These racks need not accommodate 32 bicycles, but sufficient quantity, 7 per phase, shall be provided for guests at the convenience of residents. This requirement will be reviewed with the building permit. Number 23, and part of that is, and I'm looking at a furrowed brow from Commissioner Morgan. Part of that is actually not that we think bicycles are not important. It's the fact that as this project has moved from more like a stacked flat condominium project to a townhouse project with garages, there's actually bicycle parking in each garage. So you have, even though what this is basically looks like on the surface is that we're saying less bicycle parking is fine, it's actually, we're saying that there needs to be bicycle parking in the common areas, both in Phases 2 and Phase 3, but all of the garages, and each unit will have its own individual garage, will have the opportunity for bicycle parking in the garage. So we believe that there's actually and equivalent or more bicycle parking spaces being provided with this proposal. 23, details of lighting fixtures and standards shall be provided with a building permit. 24, all common use facilities such as recreational facilities, garbage and recycling collection areas, mailbox location, foyers, management office shall be accessible as required by WAC 1103181. In addition, advance warning demarcation is required at curb and handicap ramps. Really, at this point, the clubhouse was built with phase 1, and because this is turning into more of a townhouse project, really all we're talking about at this point is accessible routes, and so the ramp locations is still applicable. 25, the following conditions shall be implemented as required by the police department. Building security requests commercial quality looking mechanisms and deadbolt locks and peepholes on exterior personal doors. Consideration should be given to security of exterior windows and sliding glass doors to prevent unauthorized entry. Lighting should be provided for personnel entrance and exits. Clearly this condition was written for a different housing type than what's being proposed, and so my response back was not applicable for the townhouse project. The building and units should contain a highly visible and lighted address identifier for nighttime identification for emergency responders. 6-inch minimum. So the address piece is still important, and these will likely have individual building addresses in addition to potentially like a fourplex may have a particular building number. That'll be all decided later with building permit. An agreement and posting of parking areas for unauthorized vehicle impounds. Again, so there's individual parking spaces for each unit, and then there's a number of guest parking spaces. They will post those guest parking, but having an agreement for towing will ultimately be a decision for the homeowners association on whether they feel like they need to go to that extreme or not. The city's not going to enforce whether they're towing or not from the guest parking spaces. It's not going to happen. So 26, the following conditions shall be implemented as required by the Eastside Fire and Rescue at this point. The building shall be fully sprinklered. My comment is if required by code. So that's based on a certain square footage per building, and whether or not they trigger that is all governed by the building code. Portable fire extinguishers will be required, again, if required by code, yes. Stores fittings will be required on fire hydrants and before any combustible materials are placed on the site. Yes, that's still true. Fire lanes are to be painted red with white letters stating fire lane no parking. That's still required. An approved monitoring fire alarm system shall be installed. Again, that's not applicable for a townhouse project. Knox box shall be required. The location is to be determined by the fire department. Again, I don't believe that to be required. So here are the new conditions based on the proposed submittal. Number 1 is increase the modulation in the building fronts from 2 to 3 feet. That's actually in the city code, IMC 07440 D2B. B is buildings will be a minimum of 5 feet from Sunrise Place. That's to meet the setback requirements. Number C, the relocated 10 feet. I'm sorry. What did I say? Sorry, I was here till 3 a.m. yesterday, so a little bit punchy. Sorry, C, the relocated project sign is not approved as part of this permit, but requires a separate sign permit. I mentioned that earlier. D is continue the sidewalk along the west side of Phase 3 to connect to Sunrise Place. The additional impacts to critical areas may be mitigated through the planting of additional vegetation. So I'm going to take a moment and just point. I apologize. I'd like to have actually 2 screens, but I don't have 2 screens, so I'm going to use my handy-dandy little map here to show you. So as you look at the sidewalk along we established that was east. Is that east? West, sorry. The west end of Phase 3, it stops right here. The reason why they did not kind of curve it up to Sunrise Place is because this is the buffer for Cabin Creek. but I think we can work with the applicant and a mitigation plan to actually get the sidewalk to go all the way to Sunrise. Frankly, we have too many sidewalks in our community that just end, and getting them all the way to a place where they can then connect to another sidewalk seemed like an important place for us to go. I am now on E. Thank you. So in lieu of street trees on the private roads serving phases 2 and 3, an equivalent number of trees shall be planted on the property. This calculation shall be provided with the submitted landscape plan. Okay, back to my drawing. So if you look, when you get a plan, oh, by the way, my apologies for how the packet got photocopied. That's not the way mine looked. If you guys would like 11 by 17 plan set, I can get them in the mail to you this week, so you'll have them before the next meeting. So if you would, hands? So I can make a copy available. All right, let's talk. Give me your contact information. So everybody, all right. So I will get you guys 11 by 17 plans probably by tomorrow in the mail. Okay. So that way we'll have them plenty of time before the next meeting. So if you look at the plans on the street that serve these, your typical street section is curb, gutter, planter strip, sidewalk. Right? Curb, gutter, planter strip, sidewalk. Planter strip has street trees. In the proposal that we have in front of us, they've requested to kind of scrunch down the street section to remove the planter strip. There's still sidewalks, which we find important, but what you get then is you get the loss of the street trees. And what this condition is saying is if we had provided the normal street section, we would have had X number of street trees. Those trees need to find their way into this project somehow, somewhere. So that's, so that's something that this condition is saying that they have to do with their landscape plan. F. Each garage will be large enough to accommodate 2 standard parking stalls. Now, I added this dimension in here because they actually asked for a minor reduction to 8.5 by 18. And the city standard is 9 by 18 or 19, but we do allow 8.5 by 18 as a standard stall. And so we're okay with that slight reduction in width. Spaces and have room for waste bins and any heating or other mechanical devices. So part of this condition is to make sure that the garages can actually fit cars. Because what we find with some builders is they make the garage exactly the dimension of a parking space, and then where are people going to put their trash containers? Where's the water heater go? And once you put all that stuff in the garage, it actually doesn't have 2 real parking spaces. And so what this is trying to say is you need to have 2 real parking spaces and enough room for the other stuff. And so that'll be reviewed with the building permit. Number G, tree replacement calculations to meet the tree retention requirements shall be provided. With the landscape permit, calculations will be included in the landscape plan. H, site work permit shall comply with current stormwater requirements. And then I, alternate roadways will be private. City doesn't see any public benefit to maintaining these streets because they don't connect to other neighborhoods, and so therefore they will be private. And that's kind of my thing. So if you guys want to ask me any questions before I sit down, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I can let the applicant maybe add a short presentation at this point, or you can do public. You have many choices in front of you.
J through M.
There are J through M. Thank you. Did I mention City Council went till 3 a.m. last night? There we go. Look at that. Woo! All right. J, continue phase 2 sidewalk at the southern end of the southern property line and provide a pedestrian connection to the existing trail. If you look at the site plan, right here, this is a sidewalk that comes down this row of homes, and just ends right here. And so what this condition says is this should continue all the way to the south end of the property, and there's actually a trail that goes through this open space in between Kelkari and this neighborhood that's adjacent to it. So again, no dead-end sidewalks. They should all connect to something. K, city wet utility easements locations will be reviewed and approved as part of the final binding site plan. So that identifies water, sewer, stormwater. Building colors will match those of Kelkari 1. Colors will be earth tone. No brighter colors shall be allowed. And M, as part of the site work permit, the applicant will need to demonstrate how the construction of the proposed walls, and primarily what we're talking about is the walls along this edge. There's some fairly steep slopes between kind of where these buildings are and this green space. And concerns raised by my engineer are, how do you build those without completely destroying the open space? And so there needs to be some conversations about the actual construction techniques and how that will occur. And that, I think, is all of my comments or conditions at this point. All right. Mr. Chair, what would you like to do next?
Provide some time for the applicant to make any presentation that they wish.
May I ask a question first? Are we going to be...
You need to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you need to come to the mic.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Dave MacDuff. I'm with Intercorp, and we are the applicant. I'm just trying to make sure we understand process here. I think our understanding is we'll be actually making a formal presentation at the 20th?
Yes.
This is just an opportunity to provide a little background.
Yes.
So I just wanted you to appreciate that. This is not a formal presentation, but a little bit of background in light of what Keith presented. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rich Wagner from Bayless. He's been our principal architect on this for 2.5 years and was also the architect on Kelkari 1. So, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, that's what I was going to say. My name's Rich Wagner. I'm with Bayless Architects, 10801 Main Street, Bellevue, 98004. Thank you. Actually, I've been on this project since 1997, and I recognize one face up there. But we really appreciate the diligence that staff has worked with us so much over these last couple years, I guess it's been. Tonight, I want you to know that we are ready to answer questions if you have any. We've got our civil, soils, critical areas, legal, and landscape architects here. If you have anything like that, and we will also be returning on the 20th if you have any additional questions. I could go through their company names, but that would sound like we're advertising, and it doesn't seem quite right tonight. But they're all highly qualified, massive experience in this community in each one of these disciplines. I want to really thank staff for their efforts in working with us. A lot of the ideas that have emerged that have come forward today actually started with our discussions with staff about how can we move forward with this minor amendment. And I think they've been incredibly diligent and very helpful. The only thing I really wanted to make sure it was understood was how much less this project is. The currently approved project, which is for 6 more stacked flat condominiums, is much greater buildings, much more density, much greater parking. Even the disturbance area that we're now working with is well within the bounds of the originally approved and still valid disturbance area. Some of the areas we've pulled back on for this map here, you know, on the east side of phase 2, we're doing some walls. Let's see if I can, is there a mouse here?
Yeah, it's down on the.
Oh, there it is. This area right along here. In the original, you'll notice when you get your packet, there was a whole lot of landscaping going on and regrading in this area here. We're not doing that anymore. The other thing there was an immense amount of rework of this wetland. We're now able to stay out of that in total. So we're not impacting that. Yes, excuse me, enhancements. the walls that have gotten some attention, there's one here, and there's one back here now, whereas before, when you get your packet, you'll see that there were 20-foot walls in many, many places, 20-foot high walls. We only have 2 places now for which the geotech has worked incredibly, many exercises in working through those questions. And also, their work was done, had a peer review through the city twice. So I think we've really tried to be diligent and make sure we did our homework. Less units, less traffic, less disturbance area. We look forward to your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I would like to open the floor for the public to provide some questions or input. If you do choose to make comment, we'd appreciate if you'd sign in, and when you get up to the microphone, some of us are getting a little older and would like you to speak into the microphone and state your name and your address and then make your comments. So whoever would like to go first, go first.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Linda Springman, and I'm a resident of a property right by the current Kelkari building. Linda Springman, and my husband and I own a house that we bought when the Foothills development was just built. We were the first people that moved into our cul-de-sac. There's 2 cul-de-sacs, and then the street connecting the 2 cul-de-sacs on Sunrise Place. So we were the first ones to move into our neighborhood, and when we bought the house, we knew that the Kelkari development was happening. We actually went to the developer's location, looked at the plans with our realtor, so we knew what we were buying, and we understood the development entirely, including all the 3 phases. And so first of all, thank you, all of you, for serving on this panel. I read the 150-page packet today and couldn't believe that you all do this at every one of your meetings, so thank you for what you do. I apologize if I ramble a bit, and also if I read my notes. I don't want to miss anything here. So the first thing I wanted to say is about, I want to start with a positive, and that is that I think the developers and I agree on one thing, that this process takes way too long. As I was looking back at all of my correspondence and communication on this project, I realized it went back 3 years. I know they've been doing this since the 90s too, when the development was first started, but in just this restart of the project, I was amazed to see that 3 years has passed and how slow the process has gone. I want to talk about the process for just a minute. I think that there's a timeline referenced a couple times in the packet, and I think it's missing a critical element. The MSP extension application was actually asked for in March of 14, and I don't think that's referenced in here. I think the timeline goes back to the 90s and then starts at 2016. But that extension application, and forgive me if I don't really know technically what all of these are, but what I understood is that the master site plan extension application that was done in March of 14 was to give a 3-year extension to the project to allow the project to restart. Just as I would like it on the timeline, and to note that that extension, the 3-year extension was done. Comment was asked for. I submitted comment on it, and the 3 years passed or ended at the end of August. So I assume there's some wording about it vesting, so maybe because this process is ongoing, that's still alive. But the 3-year extension of the master site plan, the way I read it, has expired. Correct me if I'm wrong, I apologize. The other part of the process I wanted to talk about is the SEPA determination of non-significance. And I appreciate you allowing comment. I know your goal is to have everybody involved in the process and do the right thing for the community. And I think to that end, you've created some processes that are to encourage input, but to put some parameters around it. When the determination of non-significance was issued, it was in December of 2016. And I got to go to my notes to make sure I get this timing right. But just so you know, I think you are in the spirit of what you're trying to do, but I think we need to use some common sense to make sure that we're thinking about the time of year. So when that happened, let's see, I received the letter in the mail. I'm one of those within 300 feet of the development, so I do get a letter, even though my neighbors about 3 doors down don't. I received a letter in the mail on December 21st of 2016 announcing the DNS decision and indicating a 14-day comment period from December 14th, 1 week prior, to December 28th of 2016 was open. The letter was received a week after the 2-week comment period started, and during Christmas week. I sent emails, or I'm sorry, I just want to get my sequencing right on this. So I was leaving for a holiday family vacation the next morning, so I hand wrote a note. I dropped it in the mail because I couldn't find email addresses of who to send it to. I then found email addresses that next day. I sent it to 2 staff members and got bounce backs from both of their emails saying the offices were closed for the holiday, surprise, and that they'd be back on January 3rd or January 9th, respectively. So I know nothing is happening at that time. The email I sent and the letter I quickly wrote was, you've given us time over the holidays. I found out a week into the process, and it's the holiday season. Please give us a 3-week extension so that we can look at this and respond, and I was denied. So I think you need to think about that. 14 days is great if you're not smack in the middle of the holiday season, so please rethink that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is throughout the 150 pages, there's reference to the current plan and how it relates to the original plan. And I find the references to that are very valid because indeed it's changed. But I think it's irrelevant because who in here wouldn't revisit some decisions we made 20 years ago if you had it to do all over again? So just referencing the permit that was issued 19 years ago, I don't think is a valid way for this process to happen. Things have changed immensely since then, and I think the process should reflect that. Having said that, this is beautiful. I think this is a beautiful development as it's been presented today. I have no idea about environmental or other issues and the way things have changed since 1999 when the first development was done. The 2 things I really wanted to tackle here are, one, the environmental stability issues. I read the SEPA report. I don't understand half of what's in it, but I know that since this development was approved, there have been some significant issues that we've run into in our community and in Washington State. We had the Oso landslide, we had the Talus landslide, and even before that, and it's mentioned in here, part of the Foothills development was canceled because of a landslide 500 feet from where this is happening. So while I read and understood the SEPA report, I just frankly don't believe it. I think it needs more look. So that's my opinion on the environmental. I think we need a deeper view of that. The 5th thing is traffic. I don't think 20 years ago we planned for traffic to be in the situation it is. I understand that there's traffic references in here, but we have a significant problem at the intersection of Newport Way and Wildwood. Wildwood's the street that brings you up to Sunrise where this development is. I have a correspondence. I sound like I write to you guys a lot, and I honestly don't. In the 17 years I've lived here, I've written like 4 letters, and I've only been to 1 other city council meeting. So I'm just amazed that all of these things are interrelated that I've been communicating to the city about. The traffic gets so bad coming up Newport Way to go, I don't know the name of the road, up Front Street, that the traffic is backed all the way up to the elementary school most evenings. I've taken pictures of it. I've sent it into the city engineering department, I think it is. They very politely sent me a letter and said I was wrong when I recommended that maybe they have the right turn be a right turn only lane. So
just for the record, that's Newport, and it backs up all the way to the intersection with the Target.
yes, thank you. Newport Way that backs all the way up to Target most nights a week. I think you guys have probably all gotten stuck in that traffic too. And my approach was, I recognize this is a problem. I want to suggest a solution, and maybe we can find an answer. The letter I got back told me that my solution would not work and it would make it worse, but didn't offer another suggestion. So I feel like when I'm providing comments, we're not getting a option back. We're not having a conversation about what else could we do about things. So anyhow, the The last thing I just wanted to ask, and I don't know if it's in this paperwork anywhere, but I can probably talk to the developers about it, is that I would love to see a project timeline, what the build plan is. Is there a Gantt chart of start, finish, dig dirt, start, pounding foundations in, so that we can understand if it's going to impact summers and kids out of school and that kind of thing. And then the last thing is there's a reference to the Sunrise Place, and that it's going to have parking on one side, and I think it says in the plan that it's a fire zone on the other side, but in fact, there's nothing posted, there's no red markers, and during the summer and weekends, there's cars parked on both sides of the roads, just a little bit further down by the entrance to the trail, and only one car can get through when there's cars parked on both sides. So we need to address that it's parking on one side of the street or not, or widen the road. Thanks for your time, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you have a chance to have a pointer or laser yards?
There's
So
a mouse.
the mouse points.
Oh, the mouse, okay.
Good evening. I guess I have to crouch down because this thing's not normal height, like that. I'm Tom McDonald. I live at 1227 Sunrise Place Southeast. I'm also the president of the Foothills Association. And so I have a couple items to bring up. I'll start with the traffic part. Traffic is, the last thing that I looked at was, I already have it here somewhere. Well, anyway, they looked at the traffic that is really at Wildwood and at Newport, or Wildwood and Sunrise. But what happens is when you take Wildwood back down to Newport, it will back up to the Target parking lot area. And part of that is just what's happened over the last couple of years. I think when they shut down May Valley Road for a short time for some of the culvert and the slide repair, May Valley Road, the traffic started coming through Issaquah. Now it just continues to come through that. But it's horrific. And so what happens is people pull in the right-hand lane to go through the intersection to go onto Front Street South. And so those that live anywhere on Wildwood going up the hill can't get into Wildwood. And so people, including me, will actually wait for the cars to stop, go in the other lane and cut in front of them to make a left turn on a green light because no one can move anyway. So that needs to be looked at, how that whole intersection is going to be worked. Also on the environmental justice side, I don't think any of the neighborhood from the intersection with Wildwood and Newport have been notified about all the traffic that's going to now be at that intersection that will be produced by this development or other developments up the hillside. For the record, I also just want to note that Matt Feltman has written several correspondence letters. I want to make sure that those are noted, that those have been turned into the city as well. Let's see. One comment, the signboard that was up there, they finally had a date on it, and then there was a time, and then the time was taken off. So it just didn't seem like it was accurately publicized that there was a commission meeting tonight until word kind of got around. And in the Foothills development, I've actually asked that I be put on notifications so I can get some notifications, because no one really knew about it except the 3 houses that were within the 300 development, or 300 proximity area. I want to talk about the slides for just a minute. The slide that Linda is referring to is if you go straight up to the intersection with First Place, with the retaining wall starting
So
right
Tom,
there.
you need to be at the mic because we're actually on TV. And
Okay, on TV.
There's a mouse.
There's a mouse.
There's a mouse on the tray. On the tray, kind of belt high.
Got it. Thank you.
It'll point for you.
Okay, so the retaining wall actually starts about right here, and that's when this area was going to be developed. The whole, it slid across the road to clean it up and put the retaining wall in. So it is pretty close proximity to the existing development that's here. So they do have monitoring wells all up in that area. So that would be something that is a big concern, that would both hamper the development here and as well as the road and access. So okay, copy conditions. Okay, the lane width, 28-foot lane width versus 32-foot lane width. It's kind of nice to have less pavement, but the reality of it is it may be trying to skirt the actual requirement or need to have a 32-foot wide. roadway. What happens as you go further down the road, we all have fire suppression systems in our house because the fire department has an issue of not being able to get down the road because of the lane width and with parking on one side of the road. So I'm not sure if there is plans to have a fire suppression system in these developments, if it's going to be a 28-foot wide road. Also, you can't really turn around within a 28-foot road if there's cars parked on one side. So what I presume would happen is that people would just go down, turn down First Place, turn around in First Place where there's a widened area where all the kids are playing, and then come back up the road. So that's an additional concern as far as the width of the road and some of the issues that will create. A signal at Newport, a signal at Wildwood and Sunrise, I'd die before I'd want a signal there. It's just like, this, not another signal in town. So I don't think that the traffic would really warrant a signal there, but I'd like to see something else other than a signal, especially when you look at the grades coming down Wildwood at that one point, which are approaching probably 12 to 13% as they come down the grade. Line of sight, that is an issue and a concern as far as being able to, if you have cars parked or landscape, being able to pull out of these and being able to see down the hill. Now, particularly in the circumstances where you're going to be looking to the left where the road is curving to the left to back away. Retaining wall, I think, and I'm not sure if I understood this correct, that the retaining wall was going to be on public property versus which makes it a city maintenance thing versus a retaining wall being on private property, which means it's the developers to retain. So as taxpayer, I don't want my taxes going for paying for someone else's retaining wall that was done on public right-of-way when it should have been done on private right-of-way for the development. So I'm not sure if I understood it right. It's on private. Okay, then next to that. Thank you for that clarification. Let's see, bike racks, I had a question. I'm not sure why you have bike racks. Who would be tying their bike up to a bike rack outside if they live in there anyway? And so I would kind of agree that I don't know why you need bike racks. They're just going to be vandalized on the bike racks. If I'm not sure if they were just for public parking or not, but fire suppression system, I talked about that. And I had a note about the sidewalk buffer. So the sidewalk, as you come out of the, as you noted before, when you come on the east side between the two where the sidewalk comes up and then connects to the trail, well, once it connects to the trail, it's actually a gravel trail, and there are several, it's probably 12 steps that go from almost where that point where that connection is, we can see that thin line. There's a mouse. Located right here. This is a gravel trail, and then there's a series of 8 wood and gravel steps that come up this point here. So this really wouldn't be ADA accessible for coming up, and I don't know if we'd want to have a private development connecting to a public trail on the side like that versus coming up and connecting to the sidewalk. The garage reduction, I'm not sure I understood why the garage reduction of going from 8 feet, if that reduces the actual width of the house, is that the purpose of the garage reduction, or is it so you fit more houses in, or is it just the
design aspect of the garage that we're seeing in kind of now?
Okay, I think I get that. So connection, and then one other comment was if all the federal ADA requirements are met with the development in this. And that's all I have, unless anybody else has any other questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Other commenters? Please sign in.
Sorry, can I come back for one more comment, or am I?
Looks like it.
The power grid. I'm not sure how the power is going to be brought up the street, but currently in Sunrise, we have lights dim when there's a heavy power draw. Everything from air conditioners turn on. Some of the units, the lights will dim when the power for the air conditioner, for example, the next door neighbor, the air conditioning goes on, the lights dim in the house until the unit is back up. So I'm not sure if that's tied to the remainder of the power grid that's along the street here. or not. So that would be something I would question as well. So thank you.
Well,
Hi. Yeah, I want to thank everybody too for the work that you do. I have a daughter who is a fully licensed landscape architect, and she just joined the planning commission in the town where she lives in Astoria, Oregon. So I'm real excited for her. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Pat Duke. I've lived in Issaquah for 31 years. I live at 375 Southeast Croston Lane in Old Town. And I have just some questions. And, you know, I'm really familiar with Kelkari and where it is and all of that. Where is this whole site and the development of Phase 2 and Phase 3 in relation to that little trail, that trailhead that's on Sunrise Place, right down the street from Kelkari, and then it traverses, I guess it goes up the hill, which I've never done, and it traverses a hill over to Sycamore? Where is this relative to that? How close?
Right next to it, it's the yellow thread. Yeah, nobody wants to mention it, but it's right next to the.
So that trail that goes up the hill and then it goes over to Sycamore? It's right next to it? Okay. Well, I do have something to say about that. I'm a native plant steward, and I love the outdoors. And I hadn't been on that trail until recently, but it's amazing. And it's got creeks that apparently are year-round. I was there just days ago, and it's got 2 creeks on it that are running right now. So we have an extraordinary drought, and that means we've got some, creeks that I don't know if they're considered salmon-bearing creeks or not, because they run down into Issaquah Creek. And so I'd like to know more about that. It also has some extraordinary timber on it, and I know what happens when there's construction. I mean, I remember what happened in Tallis when developers just cut down the trees, or builders or whoever cut them down. It's like, cut them down, pay the fine, and I would hate to see that happen. There's some really extraordinary forest in there. Some of the wildlife habitat and plants and everything that are in there, you just never see them in that, like huge banks of maidenhair ferns that are just absolutely gorgeous. So one of the things I wanted to do tonight is, I'm retired, and it's a short hike. It's only a mile. It takes a little bit longer. You had to kind of wind down through Sycamore to get back. But I would love to take anyone on the Planning Commission who would like to go on that little hike. It's very, very pretty. It's a wonderful, not with this air, but it's a wonderful place to be on a warm day. It's nice and cool. And I just like some of the people who are making these decisions to see what that looks like, to make sure that if they're going to do some development, they don't disturb that area. I also just want to make a comment in general about pervious surfaces, and that is, we've all been hearing again and again and again with the flooding that was in Houston, how one of the really big factors in that, and I had coffee this morning with someone in the reinsurance industry, who has a bunch of actuaries working for them, and things like this are really important when they're doing risk assessment. And when you take areas like that basically you can't flood them. They're so forested, they have so much cushioning, it's like a huge sponge, that it really does a lot to mitigate flooding. And I want to make sure that we don't do something really, really foolish to damage that kind of restorative area that we have in our city also. So my name is Pat Duke. I'm going to put my email address and my phone number on this, and I would just be delighted to take anyone. You could do this on your lunch if you're in the area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Well, we appreciate those comments. We will close the public hearing portion of this meeting now, and commissioners, I'll open it up for comments from you guys and gals. Questions?
Well, I'll jump in. I guess a quick question then, Heath, about the potential expiration of the MSP extension, or?
So what I'll do is I'll give you the short answer, and then as usual, we will provide a response memo to all the questions and comments that came up this evening. So the condition about the extension of the original approvals, there was a application made by the current applicant that came in while the application was still within that time frame. And, you know, right now, Ms. Springman was correct. We are beyond that. So if ultimately these guys decide to walk away from this project, the original kind of decisions have kind of run their term. So we are in this kind of moment where you've got this proposal that's in front of us, and whether or not they are going to seek it all the way through to permits and construction, we don't know the answer to that today. Obviously, it might depend on how this process goes and what conditions come out of it. But if ultimately they did decide to walk away from this and this permit was deemed inactive and done, it would put that original SDP and master site plan at an expiration point. That would be my non-legal answer. Hopefully it semi-jives with our city attorney, but that would be my take.
Chair, can I ask some kind of follow-up or related questions? So regarding vesting, there were several mentions in the staff report about application of regulations specifically around critical areas, critical area buffers, and et cetera. Is this application does it continue to stay vested under the regulations at the time of application, or are we applying the current regulations in some instances against this particular proposal?
It's going to be some of both. So we tried to. There were certain decisions made back in '99 that if you were to apply current regulations, it would basically maybe make any project in this location really hard to do. And so we had to use some judgment in terms of which standards were vested and which ones could be brought to current. So for example, the tree retention was not originally applied to this permit, but you know, there's really no reason why, you know, phase 2 has already been graded. So it's not quite an issue for phase 2, but phase 3, as you saw from the photographs, is currently forested. And, you know, I think there's no reason why we shouldn't expect that phase 3 should apply, so the tree retention requirement should apply to phase 3. So I don't want to say we kind of handpicked some of those, but we tried to use some discretion to say what makes sense, what can we actually put in terms of new standards. Now, some of it's procedural. So for example, right now the city has a number of geotechnical engineers under contract. We use Golder and Shannon & Wilson and AMEC. And so when this application came in, which is different than the processes and procedures we had in place in '99, we had our geotech engineers review their geotechnical plans, because this is a piece of property because of, as was mentioned earlier, the proximity to the foothills, and we know that there was a slide action there. And a number of the slopes that were created on Kelkari were kind of spoils from previous grading activities, like I think from the 60s. I don't know the history of that exactly, but it is from a long time ago. And so from a geologic perspective, it's not one of those sites that you say, oh yeah, that looks fine. It actually looks different than fine. So there was reason for us to provide an extra level of care when it came to looking at the geology of this.
Thank you.
Question on the lane width discussion. Let's see. On page 63 of 150, that's where the deviation request occurs to reduce to 10-foot lanes. Was that what you were referring to earlier, Keith?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and also on page 34, there's a request to increase the access way for Phase 3 from 24 to 26 feet. How do those two relate? I don't quite understand the relationship there.
Did you say 34, Richard?
Right, 34 of 150, the lower footer.
I need to go to
there.
Sorry. Say that page number again.
Okay, yeah, it's 34 of 150. I can't see where we
I'm looking
are
for
there.
134, and I'm like, there aren't that many.
No.
All right, sorry. Did I mention I was here till 3 o'clock? All right.
Down under background toward the bottom.
That's 34 of 94.
Yeah, we have different documents.
So are you on the document?
10 of 94.
10? Thank you. Okay. All right.
Right, that background paragraph right there.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah,
Okay, awesome. Modified project includes minor amendment to the master site plan, modified to decrease the total number of residential units, decrease building height, preserve building character, minor changes to impervious surface, minor change in access, increasing Phase 3 access way.
It's right there.
I would say, I don't believe that to be accurate. I believe that, so if we're talking about this roadway right here, and I think, if you look at the plan sections, and I can go to the plan sheets if we need to do that, I'm going to tell you, I think that's 20 feet clear. Okay. We have the applicant's civil engineer looking at their plans, so hopefully I'll have an answer for you in a second.
What section are you referring to?
I think we're talking about this street section. Yeah. So most of the interior roadways are 20 feet, which is what is the minimum required for fire for complete access. So I'm not, I think. Yeah, please, Rich.
I think that this particular area is referencing what we would often call a curb cut into Phase 3. So it's off of Sunset going into Phase 3. And it's actually existing. Jim, we're not changing that drive at all, were we? No, yeah. And I actually think that one is 26, but Jim can confirm that as we proceed.
So that's the actual kind of
That's
curb cut
Exactly.
in Sunrise.
Right.
Okay.
And that
So-
allows us up around the curve, and then it drops to 20 feet.
So I'm making myself a note, Richard. It seems like that needs some clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, do you mind if I jump in on that since we're on that section? And number 4, allow increase in the impervious from 447 to 455. And the SEPA says impervious is unchanged at 447, and I think the amendment requirement is you can have no increase in impervious. Was that item number 4 incorrect, or?
So let me look at those numbers. Oh, sorry, Wes. So let me reconcile that piece. I'll look at the SEPA decision, and if we have a disconnect, we'll provide a clarification on that.
And do I understand it correctly, too, then on the amendment process, one of the requirements was you cannot have an increase in impervious? So any of the changes that would be made, adding sidewalk along the west side to get to Sunrise, all of that would, in the end, we'd have to have no more than 447 of impervious.
So the impervious would need to balance out.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Question, Kevin. I guess we talked quite a bit about the time extension and stuff like that, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But I think the traffic issue, that's everybody's concerned about that. Are we using 20 years traffic data in this project, or are we doing an amendment to the traffic? Because, we talk about every project. This issue always comes up, traffic and school bus and fire lane.
Yeah.
And I'm, when you were doing your presentation, you talk about the fire department approved it. I'm not sure what they approve or what they saw, because to me, the fire engine comes in and it's a dead end street there, and there's no way that they can turn around. I'm talking about the west side. I think that's phase 2, yeah. That
So phase 2 is this one?
No, the other one?
Phase 3?
Yeah. Is that phase 3?
Yes, phase 3 is on
Yeah.
this side.
Okay, so I'm not sure what they saw or what they approved, but to me, if they were to approve it, I would like to think that they probably want to think about how they want to turn their engine around to get back out.
Right.
Same thing with the school bus. But I think primarily it's the traffic issue. The whole city's everybody's all excited about traffic, adding more units and creating more traffic. And I can see the traffic that the neighbors are bringing up. And how are we adjusting to that?
Sure. So both those issues, we'll definitely provide a more detailed response in our response memo. But what I would say is, and this gets back to Ms. Springman's comment earlier about vesting, as long as this permit was retained as an active permit, it was vested to traffic for 126 condominiums. Okay, so that was put in the city's traffic model. It's in there. What's being actually proposed today is 72 and not 126. So there's actually a reduction in units, which is actually a reduction in actual trips, even though those trips aren't out on the network today. So the backups that we heard about on Newport are real, and these cars will add to that. But from a concurrency standpoint, these 72 townhouses are already in the city's model because they're part of a permit that is currently in existence. And so that's kind of the traffic concurrency piece. From a fire department and fire department turnaround perspective, these ends have to meet the dimensional requirements to turn a fire truck. And so I assume that when the fire marshal reviewed these plans, that those specs meet their requirements. And if they don't, then they actually don't go in far enough. Do you want to do this? I'm so sorry. You can do this. So they do review these plans, and so all I can say is it met whatever their standards are.
So they haven't seen these new plans yet? Is that?
They have.
Oh, they have?
Yeah.
Did
So they reviewed
approve
this
it?
plan.
They approve it, huh?
They did.
Okay. I'm surprised. But the other thing too is that I understand what you just said, Kevin, but the reality of it is that the traffic is there every day. And we haven't, the actual thing is that we haven't addressed the new condominium that's going in there. Plus, we got more projects in the pipeline. The one across from Issaquah Elementary School, that's another big project that's going in. And so that's going to add to the Newport Way corridor. And so, we can talk about the module that the engineering department did, and they looked into it, and it's fine. But to explain to the neighbors and people living in that area, it's not fine. There's traffic in there, and we got big projects coming up. We got another one in front of Issaquah Valley, and that's going to add to the traffic. How do we explain to them that it is okay? Are we expanding the roadway? Are we putting more traffic lights? I know we're putting a roundabout there. Hopefully it will help. But it's hard to explain or let the neighbors understand that it's okay. The traffic will be solved. I don't think.
So I didn't say that. And
20-year-old study.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make.
But it's hard for everybody, for neighbors to think that it's okay. These are, the module says it's okay.
so the model says it meets the city's concurrency requirements. So the issue that the city's struggling with overall in terms of traffic is regional traffic cutting through the city. So whether it's Newport or SR 900 or 56th or East Lake Sammamish or Front Street, the issue is regional traffic, which is going from somewhere else through Issaquah to somewhere else. The rights that this property have to develop are based on the city's concurrency model, and it is vested to a certain number of trips for 126 condominiums, which it will not use that many trips. It doesn't change the fact that Newport has backups. It doesn't change the fact that Front Street has backups and Sunset has backups. The city is dealing with that issue and regional traffic in a different way. We just created a transportation advisory board, and that has not, it actually hasn't, it's been authorized by the city council. They approved a new staff position to staff that board, and that board will be created and commence next year. So it is, traffic is the #1 issue for the city to have conversations about and look for solutions for. I don't think that you can fix traffic because the more capacity you build in the roads, it will fill up. And so this is, kind of the problem that we're dealing with. So from an overall regional traffic perspective.
We're working on it. Thank you.
And there will be, just to remind people, there will be a response memo made to the comments that were made so that on the 20th you'll get as full of explanation as possible on what is going to happen, how we see dealing with it.
And let me just say one thing, just in case we end early. Not that I'm advocating for that. For all of you who are here tonight, even if you didn't speak, please sign up. I will make sure that you guys get a copy of the response memo so that you can actually see how staff responded to the questions in advance to the next meeting on the 20th. So at your convenience.
Public comment period's over. Thank you. Commissioners.
Just can you email me?
So, Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Related to roads, again, there's some modifications that were made in the current proposal with respect to the road profile, discussion about removal of the median and street trees that are included in the median, et cetera. And I don't know if this is a question for you, or if Keith, or if this is a question for Richard Wagner. But Is the road system within the development, these 3 phases of the development, is it going to be a consistent kind of look and feel at the end of this, or does this change create a different experience? And then second part of the question, if the answer to that first question is it's going to be consistent, and the condition is to replace the street trees, or place the street trees that would have otherwise been required elsewhere in the development, what's the thinking about how that happens in some sort of a design solution that enhances the project instead of just randomly plants trees on the property?
Let me see if there's two questions in there. Okay.
Right.
The first one about the road profiles and whether they're consistent. The access down Cabin Creek Lane here will change in its appearance. Certainly right now it's all graded out and grassed, both sides for phase 2. When this gets built out, what will be different from what was originally approved, is that part of the question, or just?
Yes.
Okay. Originally approved, you'll see this in the packet, there was parking and access along the front here, and then the building set here and here. Now what we're proposing, and those were 3-story buildings over 1 level of parking. We're now proposing that the drive down Cabin Creek Lane, as well as the drive on Sunrise, these are what we're calling our A units, and they will all appear only 2 stories high, and they'll have front doors. So this project now will present itself to Sunrise and certainly present itself to Cabin Creek. Once you get past these, then these access drives here, the shared drives, come in here and they serve the garages. On this side, they will also serve the front doors. These buildings here are 2 stories visible. These are, because the A's are 2 on the front with the garage under, they're 3 stories back here. So access comes in here, and this is a hammerhead turnaround for the fire department. Over here, same profile. And what we're looking for here, excuse me, not quite the same. This has, wherever there's a unit access on the front of the building, that has a sidewalk, a 5-foot sidewalk and a 6-inch curb. That occurs over here as well. These buildings have both garages and front doors on this side, so there is a 5-foot sidewalk and a 6-inch curb. On this side, again, garages and front doors, sidewalks and curbs. This also, the planning department had the idea of maybe we put some type of address or lighting bollard in front of each one of these entries, and we're proposing that as well. So the character through here, you know, if you cut a section through here, and you'll see that in the packet, this character on this road and the character on this road will be very, very similar. This road's a little different. It's a little higher than the clubhouse here, a little bit of a grade change, and it's basically, excuse me, serving these garages.
Okay, so I appreciate that, and the kind of move toward more of a residential pedestrian scale kind
Very
of
much
experience
so.
along the road. So as far as the street trees are concerned, and I don't know how many trees were in the original proposal or required, but what's the plan for, I don't know if you've gone that far down the landscaping design path yet, but what's the plan for dealing with revegetation with the trees?
The applicant has authorized a tree survey now, and that's going to be implemented. We've got out here the other day and staked the boundaries for the disturbance area, so we know right what we're talking about. The idea here is there will be some trees removed. In fact, this will probably be pretty cleared out. And then coming back in where best to plant those trees, I agree with you, you don't want to just drop them in wherever the landscaper drops them in. Our landscape architect here is Weissman Associates. Nick is here, and he'll be here next week as well, or 2 weeks. And they put a lot of effort into making sure there's spaces for these, not only the trees and the tree count, but also how they're used. As an example, this area right here and this area over here, those trees are clustered around picnic tables and viewpoints looking out over the wetland. So we're using the landscaping to create outdoor spaces.
Okay. Can I ask, since we've got Rich at the microphone, just another question. There were a number of comments related to trail and sidewalk connectivity. Can you walk us through maybe in a little more detail, how this all fits together from a pedestrian and trail user standpoint?
I would be happy to do that. In fact, I would love to start the walkthrough with Ms. Duke as we take a tour. Starting with the urban setting, these are all sidewalks on Sunrise Place on both sides that are existing. The sidewalks will continue down through here. Right now, there's no sidewalk here, and there's a broken sidewalk here I shouldn't say broken, it's unimproved because this is part of Phase 2, but these sidewalks will come down both sides then. We talked about the sidewalks in the middle. So when we connect to the existing trails, the existing trail starts it starts way down here and comes up, and it's a wonderful hike. You don't want to take this if you're on blood medicine or blood pressure medicine, because it's really spectacular. This trail here remains existing. The only change we're doing in this trail here, and one of the comments picked it up, was this area right here. The existing stair that comes up there is actually on the private property of Phase 2. We're going to be reconstructing that, and if you walk it, you'll realize, reconstruction is a good idea here, because it's pretty beat up, and we're going to move that trail just to the edge of the project here. So it will come up this way and connect to Sunrise. The trail continues this way, and this is the existing trail now, the Squaw Mountain Trail. We are going to put a interpretive center down here because we noticed there's actually a wonderful little kiosk there, but has nothing on it. So we think an interpretive center would make for this walk to be far more educational, and it goes up to the hill. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Further comments?
I've another question since we have you up there, Rich. I don't know if you have this right now, but the original building square footage and the proposed building square footage, and then the original number of parking stalls and the proposed number of parking stalls?
Yes, we have all that in the data, and I believe it's in the packet. You'll see that. I don't remember it right now.
Yeah, I don't think I saw square footages, and
Oh, excuse me? Okay.
might be on that micro print under 8x11.
Maybe.
If I knew how to zoom in, I would. In the packet, there's an exhibit called E1, and it's the site disturbance and wall exhibit. And this actually became a driving force in our design concepts. But at the very top, you'll notice that there's data. The total approved gross floor area is 390,163. The total proposed gross floor area is 296,495, reduction of about 95,000 square feet.
And then the
Parking?
number of parking stalls.
I don't have that on this, but I do know that it's in the report. One of the differences in counting them that you'll also see is the condominium, the flats, the existing building, Phase 2, the parking, a lot of the parking is below the building. And there's quite a bit of surface parking, which is also shared by the community center. And then, because we're now townhomes, our goal is to have garages with cars in the garage. So when we looked at guest parking, it was really a question of how many guests do we think this will have, and we worked with the city's current code on that.
Okay, well, that'd be one thing I'd like to see on the 20th is what were the original, given what was approved, and I think it was 189 or
On the parking?
in the parking, something like that. But how many actual stalls then and now, both under building and gas, just to be able to see that, we've got townhomes, but I hate to find out we have more parking than we had before.
You will see those in the report, but we'll come back, we'll highlight those at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if I remember seeing that exhibit in our package.
If it's not, I will add it as
Okay.
part of the briefing memos. I tried to not make it over 200 pages, so there might have been some selective
Okay.
things not
It's
included.
always
So,
the one thing.
there's always one. So I will make sure that you
Great,
guys
thank
get that.
I'm pretty sure I read the parking number of spaces changed.
Mr. Chair, can I, a couple more, and then I'll stop. I've got two
No.
more. Since we're picking on Rich, I want to pick on him one more time. So there are, these are some minor detail questions really, but in the new conditions, the first condition A talks about changing building modulation from 2 to 3 feet, and I don't know what impact that's going to have on the building design. Is that significant, or is that something you can easily integrate?
We've been wrestling a little bit with it, and most of the wrestle has been really how are we measuring it? Because as an example, we've got 3-4-foot overhangs on some of our parking garages in order to make the garage recede into the shadow. But, and we have a whole lot of texture. When you see the elevations, you'll see that. Not just in material and color, but also in modulation. What we've not really worked with staff on is in this particular report, are they referring to modulation horizontally, vertically, all of the above? Our goal on this is we don't want these buildings to be flat. They really should look very residential, and that's why we put a lot of effort into all the entries that you'll see in there too. Most of the entry, in fact, all of the unit entries are covered with a they have a small stoop and a cover over it, and the cover is 5, maybe 6 feet in some cases, proud of the building itself. So I think you'll see we have a lot of modulation in there.
Okay, so on the 20th, that will be something that we'll spend a lot more
Certainly.
time taking
Yeah.
a look at. And then,
For information, the parking's on page 52 of 150 in the packet.
thank you. The other question on condition L, looks like, it's one of the new conditions. It says building colors will match those of Kelkari Phase 1, which is pretty strong language if you're going to match it. Hopefully you saved a gallon of paint, but so you can match it. So I don't know what the plan is from a color standpoint and a color.
I am glad you asked. Actually, our original proposal, our intent on the whole project was to match. Our original wording was similar or be inspired by or something like that. And staff, with all its wisdom, came down and said, you're going to match. So I went out and personally matched those colors. And since that time, we've also been able to find the original colors from the original approval. We will match those colors.
So, so just,
I didn't know it hit us.
Now, colors fade. Colors fade and move around a little bit, so we got to be a little careful.
So just, so sticking up for the city's perspective on this, it is the beginning of a conversation for you all on the 20th.
Mr. Nivens, I thought we were done with this conversation.
Done? Mr. Chair, just a clarification. I've always enjoyed Bailey's architecture in town.
Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah. One of the questions that I have, and we're talking about color and matching and stuff like that. I thought I read something that says the theme that you're going with is the National Lodge theme. Is that one of those design theme that?
No.
Okay.
It's not mirroring the choices we're having in Central Issaquah.
Yeah,
No, this
yeah.
is different.
So how does that, or have we approved the design guide that
So
this
it would
project should
not
match?
apply to this project because it's not in Central Issaquah. So those standards are just for Central Issaquah.
Okay. Okay. But I enjoy your creativity.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Favorite subject. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further comments?
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
I guess this is more of a comment, I guess, or a suggestion. Keith, you on a, I've got to find your suggestions. You had an explanation on,
It's a system.
on your requirement for, or actually, I'm sorry, the original condition for talking about the 32 feet and the 28 feet, and the
Yes.
city thinking that's okay. I thought it would be better, instead of just saying complete, as it didn't complete that, to actually include your explanation of the difference and why the city thinks it's okay that way.
Okay, I can unpack that.
Yeah, thank you. On that and both item C, I think, so.
Further comments? Well, there's no use in prolonging this. I think there's one thing that I was concerned about, and I think would deserve some discussion, is the looking at what was approved and the current rules and regulations, and some explanation of how that was reconciled.
Okay.
And so just the logic, understanding the logic or the rationale, it is a bit subjective, and so it would help being able to understand how those decisions were made. And I would like to thank the excellent comments from the public. You did a great job, and I really appreciate that. That's critical to us being able to do our job and to get as good a development as we possibly can that's consistent with the desires of the community. And so thank you very much for your attendance. And with that, I think we can adjourn. And I would like it noted that it's not 12 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.